I'm Brett Sharenow. Today I'm going to cover what makes a pitch deck and a pitch investor ready. Most of you as founders have a pitch deck, but fundamentally what I have found is that very few founders have a pitch deck and a pitch that meets the standards that institutional investors want in order to take the next step with you. First of all, remember that the pitch deck is the top part of the equity raise triad. Down here, of course, is the business strategy, the compelling case for customers, and the capital raise strategy. Over here, the strategic financial forecasting model. And up at the top, the culmination, pitch and pitch deck. But also remember that everything's connected. So you can't have any breaks. There can't be any discrepancies between what's up at the top and all the pieces that are down at the bottom. So what are the two jobs that you as a founder and a presenter and your pitch deck need to do in the first 60 seconds of your pitch? The first is that you need to absolutely capture the attention of your investors and get them emotionally excited. That emotional excitement is what drives the rest of the time you're in front of an investor. If you get them excited and they are leaning in and wanting to ask you questions that you're going to cover in slide 14, but you're only on slide 2, that is a great thing. It means that they already have thought through very quickly in their minds. Institutional investors are really good, going from what you've told them down here all the way to the story arc and what comes at the end. Exit. Really good if that happens. That's your number one job. Get them excited, capture their attention. And the reason you have to do that first is because the second component is build conviction. Building conviction is bringing their intellectual self, their mind in, to confirming what their emotional self already knows. That they're excited, and now they understand why they're excited because you have a solution to a major problem, and this is the path that you're on, that story arc. Most founders reverse that. They start to build conviction first and get into the details of the products, the features of the products, and that puts investors to sleep. They don't really care about your features. They care about what the product's going to do for your customers. That's the benefit side. That's the emotional side. The second piece that comes up for a great pitch and a pitch deck that's investor ready, your slides meet the 10-second rule. The 10-second rule is an investor sees a slide on the screen and within 10 seconds, they understand the slide. Short sentence fragments and bullets are okay, but keep them small. 10 seconds is all you have. What works much better? Pictures, graphics, charts, anything that they can look at and grasp instantly. So the one that has come up for decades is the revenue graph. Revenues on this axis, time on this axis, and the numbers go like that, or the line goes like that. That tells the investor instantly what's happening with your business. They don't have to spend any time interpreting. They see investors are going up and here are the years. Now, whether that's right or wrong is a different issue. What I'm really trying to show is that you really want to be able to have investors understand your slides that quickly. The other thing that comes into play there, which a lot of founders miss, is that the header on the slide and the content of the slide don't match. So go back to your pitch deck and look at the slide as if you're looking at it for the first time if you can. What does the header say? And does everything on the slide below it match what the header told you it was going to say? If it doesn't, fix it, because the investor is looking for consistency there. Remember, they're not just looking at your pitch. They're looking at you as the CEO and founder saying, can this person run this company? And if they can't get a slide right and have the header match the content, do I think they can run the business? Probably not. The next component down is the story arc, and I've mentioned that already, but in your pitch deck and your pitch, you want to start here and show, here's the problem, massive problem. Here's our solution, amazing solution. Next up is, here's the market size. Here's how much of the market we can capture. Next up is go-to-market strategy, how we're going to capture those customers. Next up might be a little bit more about the product or service, how it works, what it does, why it's so compelling. And you are going down to the point where you eventually get to financials, a unit case, competitive moat, why you can protect this business, and eventually how much you're going to raise, and of course, exit. So that story arc from this is the problem to this is the exit, you need to take the investor through that in your pitch and pitch deck, and it needs to be smooth, and you're like laying out the yellow brick road in front of them, and It's such a yellow brick road that they know what's coming, and they know because they've seen so many of these before. And if you start jumping around and go off that yellow brick road, they get confused. And anytime you've got a confused investor, you've gotten away from that emotional excitement you developed at the beginning, and you're going to lose them. I've already talked at length about the compelling case for customers and how it needs to be in your pitch deck. Your compelling case for customers, why customers want to rip the product out of your hand and pay you for it, needs to be sprinkled throughout the deck. The investor needs to understand as you go through the story arc, wow, I understand why this product or service is so amazing, why your customers are drawn to it, and why this story arc makes sense. I also mentioned at the beginning the consistency in the equity raise triad. If you're selling a product and you're telling them that I'm going to need 15 sales managers to sell it. Those sales managers, number one, need to be in the financial forecasting model so that their salaries and benefits and computers and everything else they're going to need to do their job is in there. But they also need to be over here in the strategy. Your go-to-market strategy needs to be able to articulate, ooh, I've got this many salespeople. This is what they're going to be doing. This is how I'm going to market. This is how they're going to go after the right customers and reduce the customer acquisition cost on a customer by customer basis over time. So let me talk for a minute about common deck failures. The first failure that I see repeatedly, no reason for this, but I see it all the time, is that founders don't know their pitch deck. Take a moment and pause. You can pause the video if you want. Think about, would you answer the question, do I know my pitch deck? As a yes or a maybe or a no. Here's how well you need to know your pitch deck. Let's say I'm presenting my pitch deck and I'm talking to the investors throughout this room. I'm doing this to see what my next slide is. And I'm looking back to make sure I know what the points are, and I'm making sure, did I cover them all? Not okay. Doesn't matter whether I look up here or down at my computer screen below me. The investors see you looking at your pitch deck. You need to have your pitch deck memorized. You need to know every word that's on every slide, the order that things happen, how the slides build if you have slide builds going on, where you've got something moving in or a phrase coming up at some point with a click of the mouse. You need to have that deck so well rehearsed that it allows you to improvise. Investors are going to ask questions. Improvisation means that you know the deck, and now because you know it, you can bring in answers and come up with things that came out of the sky, just came out of your mind when the investor asked. If you don't know your deck that well, you can't improvise. And if you can't improvise, you're going to get lost, and you're going to have to do this to find out where you were in the deck. Make sure you've got the deck known and your pitch known. When I work with my clients, I will work with them founder coaching through the pitch deck for 2 to 4 weeks. And we will run through the deck hundreds of times until they are at that level that I was just talking about. So I can do things to try to mislead them and throw them off track and poke at them and go back to something that they told me a while ago and say, this doesn't make sense to me. You said this and now you're saying this. Why? I'm trying to trip them up. I'm trying to get them to the point where they know their materials so well, they can smile at that answer and say, yes, I said this, and here's how this fits in. Here's why I said that. They don't get triggered. They don't get angry. They know that they've rehearsed it and they've got it nailed. If you want to know more about what should be in your pitch deck, about the equity raise triad and the 36 points from that triad that you should be covering in some way when you pitch, comment audit below, and I'll send you more information on the Investor Readiness Audit. Thanks a lot.